Hi and welcome back. Today's episode is about ggplot2. We're going to create beautiful visualizations using this amazing library, specifically about categorical variables, how to translate different tables and information to a beautiful graph. Let's see now. The first things we're going to do is to use the library ggplot2. That's where we're going to execute this line. And in this case, as you can see, you can compare my version with yours. Okay. And also, something important, you can find this Titanic information online. However, I'm going to leave some link where you can download this information. And you can compare my result with your results once you have executed all this code. Okay, something important is we're going to read this CSV file containing all the information from the Titanic disaster. And as you can see, I'm going to type something here, string as factors. This is something important, is string as factors, because we're going to use some categorical variables. Some categorical variables are not only numbers, but strings, where those strings are representing groups or categories. That's why it's something important. When I run this part, and as you can see, we're going to go here, and you can see here, we have passenger ID, where this is not information for analysis, it's just an identification or identificator. Survive 01, yes. This is not numbers, however, this is a category. The person didn't survive, the person survived to the disaster. P class is numeric, however, it means the class where this person was in this ship. You can see the third class, first class are categories. That because it doesn't mean that one is great, 3 is greater than 2, for example. However, in this case, first class is better than second class, and so on. You see this category. Name, actually, this we don't have to use string as factors in this way, right? Because the names are not categories. Ticket, not necessarily a factor, okay? So it's up to you if you want to use directly a string as factors and change it directly. Of course, there are some information here we're not going to use. Name, for example, ticket, and cabin, because there are so many missing information, we don't need to use it. Okay, and also, as you can see, there are missing values. Okay, in other ones, here is empty. You can see we have to change something here. If you wanted to use cabin, this age we have to impute or unpute the information to use it, or we can check if ggplot can handle it. So something important. Okay, that's the idea about string as factors. Variables we want to as factors, that is, in this case, male and embarked has to be factors. That's why. Okay, age is numeric, SIP is numeric, parts is numeric. Siblings and spouse on board, parents and children on board. That's what it means, is variables. Okay, let's go. Let's go to work. As we can see, head Titanic, we have all this information. View my Titanic is just what I did. And we're going to use attach. What it means attach? Attach is if you want to use all the columns names without calling my Titanic all the time. That's why. Remember that if we want to use a column, for example, ticket, we use this. My Titanic ticket. But, however, with attach, it's not necessary to typing my Titanic, because R will copy all this information directly. So attach it with a string. As you can see here, I can read all the information using str. It's the structure, integer, but however, as I said, survive and P class must be factors too. So we have to do something. Okay, and to avoid any extra work, or if we don't want to handle null values, missing information, we use complete cases and also now omit. With now omit, it's gonna omit those na, as you saw, and we will not have any problem with ggplot if any case. And also you can use complete cases. Complete cases is if there is a cell where there is misinformation, it's gonna take it as false, so we're not gonna use it in my Titanic dataset. Remember here, complete cases will return true or false. So you can see there are many falses here. And then I say, okay, inside the bracket, okay, this one are true or false. However, I want that true one, only one, the true only. There's a my Titanic bracket, and I say the observations true, the column. So you see this part here, and we're gonna save this in my Titanic. That's what we do. Now there is another data set that could be useful for you if you don't want to download my Titanic information. Is this one that comes in our Titanic. As you can see, it's a little bit different. You will see it in here. As you can see, something a little bit different, but it could work for some certain analysis. Class, first, second, third, crew. It was a crew member. Sex, male, female, and so on. Age, child. There's not numeric, but categorical. Survive. No, 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 yes. The frequency. As you can see, this is group, right? People who were in first class, they were males, adults that didn't survive, they were 118. As you can see, this is already summarized. There are 32 observations only about surviving, but it's summarized. In our case, this information is not summarized in my Titanic, so we're going to summarize it to plot it. And then I already have this information, and then I am going to ask is factor class is factor? It's going to say false. As I mentioned, P class was numeric, however, is representing categories. It's representing categories, and I have to do something with it because I want to represent my information as category. I'm talking about 1, 2, or 3 because it's not 1, 2, 3. Actually, it's first, second, and third class. So you use factor. Then when you're working with categorical variables, you must ensure that you're working with factors. Okay, and the function for that is factor in R, and factor to change this, in my case, integer variable to factor. So I'm going to change it, and I'm going to ask again, and you will see false. Didn't change it at all. P factor is still not factor or not categorical variable. What we can do, well, we could change this to, if you want to, as character, and you can change it first to character. You will see here if it's possible or not, and you can see 1, 2, 3, and then use factor, and we change it, and you can see levels 1, 2, and 3. Okay, that's the idea. If you don't want to run this and you want to keep it numeric, we can keep it like that too, and we will see it without running this part here. It's not necessary, or we will see. It depends the graph you are using. It depends. In my case, P class will represent a category, so we will see if ggplot can handle it as numeric or as a group. Let's see, and then we can go back here to use this code as we mentioned. Let's see. Here we have one special visualization for categorical variables. Is bar. Bar is a bar plot. A bar plot that will show us bars representing the frequency for each class. In this case, P class, or it means our group. And we say ggplot. Ggplot is an object. I'm going to run it. You will see it's done. This is the object ggplot. However, we must include the geometry. The geometry is here with bar. Okay. We're going to add, you can see that plus symbol here. We're going to add some information. Where coming from? Data, my Titanic. As you can see, I have to mention this. Data, my Titanic. Mapping. Mapping aesthetic. I'm going to say AAS, ES as a front aesthetic class. Let's see. But there's something here. We don't know what is the frequency for P class. We had 1, 2, and 3, but those are the name for each group. Or what is going to do R in this case? Well, as mentioned here, bar will count by default. will count. It means that it's gonna come here and start looking for a p class 3, and we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And then 1 for number 1, 1, and so on. That's what geonbar will do. Let's see. Here it is. As you can see, geonbar counts by default for each class. And it was not necessary to change p class to category, as you can see, because p class in this case is representing a category in the x-axis. It's not a scatter plot. That would be different, of course. And you see, count. I have around 200 persons in first class, and we don't take consideration if the person survived or not. As you can see, P class 2, the second class, around 150 persons, and 300, and more than 300, sorry, third class. There were more people in third class than first and second class together, mostly. Well, okay, let's see. There's another bar plot where we can use is geoncall. Geoncall, however, will not count by default. We have to pass the frequency or the height for each bar. That's the difference. If use geoncall use that identity by default, that means that it's going to selecting one by one. So we have to tell geoncall, no, x, the x-axis is p class, and y-axis is gonna be another variable that is going to be the height. But in geonbar we don't have that problem. It counts by default, as you can see. It's gonna count. So let's see. This is another way to run all this information here. As you can see here, I'm gonna run this part again. You can see what is the difference between this one and this one here. Well, here I create a ggplot object. However, here I'm going to add more information. But why are you adding information here? Well, because in ggplot can be all the information for different geometries that are going to appear in the same figure. Okay, so my data, my Titanic, and the mapping class. You know, in this case, that means that we're going to only have x as the information from one variable. However, we're going to use geonbars that we know that it's going to start counting. As you can see, this is not necessary to add because it's the default information. So let's see. You can see it create p class. You see that the object was created class 1, 2, and 3. However, there's no geometry at all. But this one goes in the x-axis that I didn't add here. Okay. And then we can add plus. You can see geonbar that count. So we're gonna. I left something here. This one. There you go. And as you can see, I already create the same file than before. As you can see, the previous file, I already did it. You see, it's the same. And I just changed, instead of typing everything inside geonbar, I put it in ggplot, and inside geonbar, I add that count. However, this one is not necessary. This line of code works as the same than this one. And here we add the different labels we want. So you always use the plus symbol after each line. You can see it, not at the beginning. If not, we're going to have the same problem I had here before. As you can see it here, R thought that it was at the beginning of the line, not that I was adding to the object ggplot. And as you can see, we have title, the title of my graph, of course. The p class, I can change this information here. And I want to add passenger class, for example. Count by class. And I'm going to change the y-axis. And we're going to add all this information at the same time. And here it is. So you can see I add a title, comparison by sex, and passenger class. Well, of course, there's something here wrong, but it was just one example. Comparison by sex, no. Comparison by passenger classes only. And passenger class. And I change the y-axis. Okay, I'm just gonna comparison by passenger classes. Like that. Okay, let's see. In Y identity, right? What is identity? As I mentioned, is used in geoncall. Well, in geoncall, the problem is gonna use it one by one. And meanwhile, with count, we'll add all together, as we saw here. What if I change here to identity? Let's see if this one works. No, it didn't even. As you can see here, there's something else. Requires the following missing aesthetic. Why? Because if the identity is going to try to see from P class which variable am I going to count as an identity. That's what it's saying, right? That's why, as you can see, there is a problem here with this identity. Why? That is not saying that it doesn't find the identity option. No, it's saying that it doesn't have Y. Okay, so we're gonna add that Y. Okay, and we can see I'm going to add now another one. However, let's see first, as I mentioned before, the X in this case. We're gonna make a comparison. I'm gonna remove this first, and we will see what it's for. Okay, as you can see now, I didn't type the Y yet. I just want to compare by sex. That means that I can plot different bar plots, or one bar plot, sorry, different bars in the same plot with another variable. In this case, sex. We have two, and then we compare. The first one is for male, the blue color, and the orange for female. So you can see we have a stacked bar plot, a stacked bar plot. And the option I remove, I'm gonna put it now, that is a trick. Instead of having this stacked bar plot, we're going to have the bar plots side by side. Let's see. Here we go. We have all our information as we want to, and we want to compare what was the distribution by sex in each of the passenger classes. That's the idea, right? If you want to stack it bar plots, you know that you don't have to use position dodge, and if you want to compare the distribution in two categorical variables, you can use position dodge. As you can see here now, I can see what was the distribution. I can see that in the first and second classes, the distribution was the same by sex. However, in third class, there was more presence of men than women. And let's see now how to compare all this, but in two different plots. That means that I'm not gonna compare in the same plot men and women side by side, but in two different plots. For that, we're gonna use facet graph. Facet graph will help us to create two or more plots depending on the number of categories we have, as we will see now. You check that X P class, and I don't have fill as before. And I don't have either position dodge. As you can see, what it's going to do this is the same plot we had in the past. However, with facet graph, we're going to add something else. And here we have. You can see now we have 1, 2, and 3, first, second, third class. For females, what was the distribution of the females in each of the passenger classes, and the same for males. And we can compare as before. So you can see here, we have side by side bars, and in this one we have two different plots. That's what we do with our information. Now let's see facet grid. It's the same information before, but what's going to be the difference between this facet grid and facet graph? As you can see here, for example, I have two plots in the same figure, but sharing the y-axis. Okay, for that's one facet graph. And let's see with facet grid. You can see now what they share is the x-axis, not the y-axis. I have two different y-axes, as you can see here. So it depends how you want to visualize the information, by this grid or as this one here. In this case, I prefer to show you the information using side-by-side plots in the same figure. And if I want to compare by sex, not the distribution for each sex, it's going to be this one, right? I want to compare by sex. in using passenger classes, this one is the best. Now, as I mentioned before, what is the difference between Barchart and John-Call? Let's go to see this. Okay. Now, there was a question I had in a stop, right? In a standby. Let's see here. The first thing is I don't have a variable here to count the number of classes. I don't have that. So we're going to use the library dplyr to start using this called pipeline and the function count. Count will count as, well, first the function says class, the presence of key class. So we're going to do this. We're going to say, okay, from my Titanic, and then the flow of information comes Titanic. But you're going to take from my Titanic P class only. You're going to count. And you will see, and we're going to save it in a new data frame called my data. And let's see what it has. It counts all of the P classes, 1, 2, and 3, and how many times all of them appears. So you can see 186, 173, and 355 as we had here before in this one here. This is 186, 173, and 355. Okay. And now we can use John-Call. Why we can use John-Call now? Because I have a y-axis. I have the y-axis. Here, in my case, is coming from my data. So as you can see, ggplot, you can see all the information here, even the aesthetic is here. My data, mapping, yes. I'm gonna tell X is gonna be P class 1, 2, 3, and Y is gonna be the height for my bars. So instead of using John-bar, I'm gonna use John-Call. Why? Because automatically here we're going to have a stat equal identity, as you can see. It's not necessary to use it, not necessary to use it, as you can see. And well, we're gonna create this information. Check what's going to happen. Okay, with ggplot, I create the object. As you can see, N is in the y-axis, and P class is in the x-axis. But now we're going to add John-Call, the different labels too. And voila, we got it. As you can see, it's the same, right? It's the same than before, but using two different geometries. In my case, it was better to use John-bar because I didn't have any count for this variable P class. But if you have this one or the one right here, for example, it's better to use John-Call because the frequency is already calculated. Okay, like that, just like that. Well, this is a way to how to plot categorical variables with ggplot. In the next episode, we will continue with other beautiful visualization for categorical variables. See you in the next episode with R and more visualization with ggplot2. Thank you.